Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time around, we're checking out a horror-themed mod by the name of Solace Dreams, a mod that puts you squarely in the shoes of a recently deceased schoolgirl and tasks you with tracking down your other recently deceased schoolmates. If that sounds vaguely spoilerish, don't worry, all of this setup is explained in the opening text crawl of the game, where an earthquake struck and promptly killed everyone, marooning them in this strange purgatory-like place. And right off the bat, this mod pulls something quite interesting, manifesting the rest of the classroom behind you while you're not looking. I always love little touches like that, but the classroom itself actually serves a purpose. It acts as the central hub for the rest of the game here, and as you complete various levels, it will open up and expand, offering you greater choice over where you go next. But to begin with, it's pretty simple and straightforward. You have one book with a key on top, and that will grant you access to the realm of that classmate, whereupon you'll have to, well, make it through alive and defeat the boss at the end of it. The first of the levels that you'll experience here is a medieval castle of sorts with long, eerie hallways and the occasional horror eager to bash your head in. Thankfully, it's here that you also discover your first weapon, which is the knuckle knife, which isn't that particularly effective, but it's a good way to defend yourself all the same. Also, during the course of the level, you'll run into various written notes that will help give you a little bit of insight into what's happened to the classmate that inhabits that particular realm. But as far as introductory levels go, this one does a damn fine job of setting up a very ominous and creepy atmosphere, greatly enhanced by the atmospheric track rumbling away in the background, and the fact that, to begin with, this mod doesn't really throw the enemies at you. In fact, it lets them wait and lets you wonder about when it's gonna happen, and that really does serve to enhance the tension. In terms of the enemies themselves, you'll find that each particular themed realm will have their own unique kind of monster to deal with. This one in particular featuring clanking suits of armor that will just bash you over the head with their swords. But one thing you may notice about these enemies as well is that they've got a kind of unusual visual style to them, and that's because they're actually constructed out of voxels. In fact, according to the creator of this mod, the vast majority of things that you'll see in Solace Dreams are actually created out of voxels. And if you don't know what voxels are, they're essentially tiny cubes that you can assemble together to make a model. Why did he decide to use voxels exactly? I'm not entirely sure, but when it comes to the enemies at least, it certainly lends them an interesting visual aesthetic. The janky movement and the fuzziness of the way they look reminds me a little of PlayStation 1 era graphics. And that, for one, does seem quite intentional when you realize some of the chief inspirations behind this also include Silent Hill. So, enough beating around the bush, how about them boss battles? Because when it comes down to it, that really is the core focus of what you're going to be dealing with here. Each of the levels, each of the realms of the classmates you'll be tasked to find ends in an encounter much like this. And one of the first things you'll probably discover about these battles, other than the fact that they're all quite visually impressive, is the fact that each and every one of them is difficult as all hell. Seriously, the scale of difficulty here, I'd say, ranges from hard to bollocking hard. And just so you know where this particular battle sits on the scale, this is quite possibly one of the easiest boss battles that I've experienced in Solace Dreams as of yet. Now, the trick with this particular boss I've found is just reading the attack animations and positioning yourself accordingly. The vast majority of stuff that this boss can throw at you can indeed be dodged, but the whole problem here is that despite being a teenage schoolgirl, Yuna here has the strafing ability of an arthritic pensioner. This means that quite often, to try and avoid an attack, you'll have to completely wheel yourself around and just run blindly in the opposite direction, hoping that it somehow gets you far enough out of range before the strike hits. Naturally, this doesn't always work out, and you have even less chance of dodging by the time the boss spawns these two clones of itself here. As a result, you're going to have to keep a close eye on the life bar in the bottom left-hand corner, and also be well aware of how many healing items you've got left in your inventory, because trust me, healing items are vital. But in any case, this opening boss battle does serve as a pretty good barometer for how you may feel about the rest of the mod itself, because if you find yourself completely exhausted by the time you fell this boss, and trust me, it's gonna take a few tries, then you might want to take a little bit of a breather because the mod only gets more difficult from here on in. This is pretty much where the mod opens up, granting you access to 3 additional realms, one of which taking place in a very creepy school, one in a dance club, and this one right here in an abandoned but very, very dangerous theme park. As you can see, this section has us dodging possessed dodgem carts, which curiously explode when they hit the other side. I'm pretty sure health and safety will have a few words to say about this particular attraction. Exploring these additional realms will also grant you access to slightly more effective weaponry. In this case, we've got ourselves the sawn-off shotgun, and much like scavenging for medical supplies, you're really going to have to make sure you search high and low for ammunition for these things, because come the boss battles, guns are really, really useful to have. Another aspect that you'll have to bear in mind is that you'll have to try and resist the temptation to spend all of that lovely, lovely ammunition killing murderous clowns and various other enemies, because really they do exist just to sap you of that ammunition that is much better served flung in the face of whatever abomination lurks at the end of a realm. Speaking of abominations, at the end of this realm you travel through a hall of mirrors until you eventually stumble on the entrance to the boss's arena, and this one is pretty interesting but also kind of marked the beginning of my overall frustration with Solace Dreams. Now, one of my main problems with this particular boss battle is the fact that the health bar at the top doesn't really deplete when you shoot the enemy. It doesn't give you any feedback on how much damage you're actually dealing. The only way you know if your attack is being effective is when it reaches this point, the ghost disappears, the glass shatters, and boom, a chunk of that health bar actually depletes. After that, though, it's back to the good old guesswork, and woe betide if you've run out of ammunition for your guns, because it's back to the good old knife, and good luck figuring out how many slashes you're gonna have to get in with that thing before you get to the next point of health bar depletion. Couple all of this with the already awkward movement and the hellish amount of damage that the boss can inflict on you with one hit, and you've got a recipe there for quite a lot of frustration. From what I can tell, however, this is entirely intentional. This is how it's meant to be. It's meant to frustrate you. It's meant to piss you off, but I'd also like to have a bit of fun, please? After throwing myself at that boss multiple times, I decided to try a different tack. I thought, why not explore some of these other realms and acquire potentially more helpful supplies, because you're not restricted to doing one of these at a time. You can freely leave and re-enter these places, bringing supplies with you as you go. And as far as I can tell, that's exactly how this mod is supposed to be played. You'll go through a realm, figure out what you're up against, and think, you know what, I best scavenge the ever-living crap out of everywhere else before I even attempt this. I know it sounds silly, but it actually reminds me of Mega Man in a way, where you'll attempt other stages because there's a beneficial power-up there that you'll know will help you tackle a tough boss later on. The only kicker being that every boss is still ridiculously tough, no matter what you do. If I'm gonna be honest, it just came down to how much bullshit I was willing to put up with during the course of Solace Dreams, because as much as I love the atmosphere and the creepiness of the realms that you go through, the boss battles were the thing that really just wore me down. It's exhausting work defeating these things, and you will spend a frankly silly amount of time scavenging the realms to get to a point where you feel like you can actually take one of these on effectively. This one is a great example. I mean, I've expended nearly all of my Uzi bullets, which I got from a different realm entirely, and now that it's down, that's great. Fantastic. Good. But I've still got 2 other sons of bitches to take down and not enough bullets to do it, and it comes down to the old pokey game with the knife, and it ain't fun. If I have to pinpoint where I completely lost my patience with Solace Dreams, I'd have to say it's this particular boss right here, which, for all intents and purposes, is absolutely fucking fantastic. I mean, look at this. It's robot Lady Gaga on a dance floor. How can that not be a ridiculously awesome boss battle? But, oh my god, is it bullshit. It just makes me feel like the boss battles were intended for something different. It doesn't feel like they fit. It feels like they were meant for something a lot more energetic and fast-paced, not a Silent Hill-inspired horror mod. I mean, I get the idea of triumphing over overwhelming odds, but really, you're dealing with an arthritic schoolgirl that clearly skipped out on cardio here. She doesn't do a great job of dodging most attacks to begin with, and really, for the love of God, this mod could do with a dodge roll. Hell, while I'm at it, give the weapons a damage buff as well, because as it stands against bosses, it feels less like I'm firing bullets and more like I'm firing frozen peas. It just feels like it needs some kind of balancing. I mean, I'm not asking for this to be brought down to my level. I'm just asking for a little bit of leeway, a little bit more control on my side, because as it currently stands, it feels like the odds are overwhelmingly skewed in favor of the game over the player themselves. Even then, if you manage to persevere and bring down a boss, it doesn't really feel as satisfying as it should. I mean, ideally, this should be a big fist-pumping moment. The music blurs triumphantly, but it just needs a little bit more. It feels like you should get a reward for overcoming such incredible odds. Maybe a boost to health, damage, or speed. Something that will benefit you in the long run. Maybe take that Mega Man model I mentioned earlier and give it a spin. Because in its current form, it just doesn't really inspire me to push on and see what's next. And you know what? That's a damn shame, because there is some seriously incredible stuff being done within this mod. I mean, this level in particular, friggin' fantastic. A homage to the Matrix, and it's just unfortunately hidden behind an absolute cliff face of a difficulty curve. It's the kind of thing that would tempt me to say it's almost worth suffering through to reach, but not quite. Not quite. Like I said, the mod needs to give me something back to want to explore further on my own volition, rather than having to unfortunately hit those fateful letters on the keyboard and brute force my way into these amazing environments. But yeah, I can't deny, on that level, on a visual level, on a design level, it's great. There is a lot of talent on display here, and I wouldn't want to disparage that at all, because this is some of my favorite stuff. The levels themselves, the exploration through them, the atmosphere and the creepiness that you get from some of them is top-notch, and it's just weird. The boss battles seem to be the thing that drags it down the most in my eyes. Let me be clear though, just because I say that this mod is not for me, doesn't mean that it won't be for you. I can see the appeal that it may have for other people. Some people may really enjoy the crushing difficulty of the boss encounters here. They may relish the challenge, but for me, I guess I'm just too much of a wuss to want to persevere through that kind of stuff. I've got other things to do with my day, you know, like drink tea, dunk biscuits, that kind of business. Not all of us have the will or fortitude to push onwards and go spelunking up a woman's vajayjay, just in case you were under any illusions of what is actually happening on screen right now. But yeah, as I said earlier, with a few tweaks, I feel like this could be a little bit more accessible for more people. It'd be a shame if this was the kind of experience only reserved for the hardcore. But in any case, what I've been able to show you here today is only a small fraction of what's present in Solace Dreams. I think all things considered, I've only been able to explore just shy of half of the available realms here, and if the rest of them turn out to be anywhere near as demented as this one, you're probably going to have to book some time at the shrink afterwards to, you know, just hash things out. But if you're strong enough, if you have the will and the patience to persevere through the abject difficulty that this mod will present to you, then the link, as usual, is in the description below. And yes, that is indeed a demon fetus, baby. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments below, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future episodes of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.